Hello my friends, and welcome to a quick BattleTech guide, kind of a fun one, on BattleTech terminology. So I get a lot of questions from non-natively English viewers about some of the jokes and terminology that we use in BattleTech, and I thought, do you know what, why not just put together a fun, quick guide to some of the things, top 5 things that I use all the time that's quite unique to BattleTech. A lot of these words are going to reveal our age, which is going to make me feel old, but here we go. So anyway, I made a fun picture for every single one, so let's go. Okay, Boombox. So Boombox is an old school giant cassette player, and they literally were just a big box. Now this is a modern one that I've photoshopped on there, but the old school ones are big and fat and use these massive they're called D or double D type batteries, which you never see them anymore because they're just too big. And the Hunchback's weapon block is roughly the same size and shape, and because of its reputation as a disco machine, which, you know, disco, loud music, loud noise, the whole thing that this is a boombox blends in rather nicely with the disco ball. So the disco balling is the old school way of doing lights in a club, where green laser is relatively safe and very easy to produce, green spectrum light, and then you would fire that light at a giant glass mirror ball at the top of your ceiling at your event hall or whatever, and it would make all these green lines everywhere. And obviously medium lasers produce this green light, and you have lots of them, and you're just firing them everywhere, and that is the joke. So there's a whole load of jokes rolled into one here. I'm aware that the Americans sometimes call a boombox a ghetto blaster, but that's kind of a bit negative. In the UK they were more associated with builders more than anything else, and to this day some companies still make boombox style reinforced media players or media centers that they look like boomboxes, and they're reinforced, and you can see them around building sites playing loud music for the construction workers to listen to while they're getting on with the arduous task of building things. Okay, so chicken and turkey, the cicada. Which one came first? I'm not quite sure. So I'm going to cover both. So the chicken walker refers to the spindly legs on the cicada and the fact that it just looks like a big chicken. The model of cicada that this refers to is the C variant, obviously. C for chicken, I've heard cicada and all that kind of thing. Now, whether this joke came first or the joke about the 2A being a turkey, I have no idea. But in the UK and in America, a turkey is something that is awful. And I don't know if this is because it invokes Christmases and Thanksgiving. An awfully prepared turkey. The traditional meal of UK Christmas is the turkey served with Satan's cabbage, which is Brussels sprouts. And no one likes it, but it's tradition. And in the US, I believe the tradition is much the same, except that they subject themselves to it on Thanksgiving. So the word turkey is a euphemism for absolutely awful, something that you endure. And because the cicada, the C variant is the chicken, then the 2A variant, which is the one with the massive engine, is the turkey, because it's awful. And the two are obviously similarly named, and turkey leg and chicken legged means, you know, spindly legs, and both variants have spindly legs. Basically, the mech is awful because the games, apart from the tabletop, most of the games don't reflect one of the key things in BattleTech's lore, which is cost. So BattleTech's lore is like a real-world military lore, so things get made that aren't very good, or they're made because they're just things of circumstance. You know, the factory that made good engines got blown up, so we've only got the factory that makes big engines, so we might as well make a big engined mech. You know, a lot of the lore is based around stuff like that. The cicada was meant to compete with the locust, and it does that very well. The chicken variants are actually decent enough in that role. They have far better firepower than the locust. It carries a PPC as standard, which could pretty much zap a locust from quite far away. And while it's still armored like a locust, it moves like a locust, which is impressive for a medium. It's a very cheap mech, and unfortunately a lot of the games are bound by you either control one mech, or you have a set of, say, 4 mechs, a small tactical squad, a lance. And this basically means that there's no room for swarm tactics like there is in the tabletop. Cicada is a very cheap and inexpensive mech, and in that role it's not bad. But the 2A is still a turkey. It is awful because it's mounting 2 lasers and a machine gun, or 2 lasers and a small laser, depending on your variation. A pair of machine guns and a medium laser. There are a few canonical mountings for it, but basically it's got 2.5 tons for weapons, and on a 40-ton medium that is, you know, not unreasonably sized. That's awful, especially when it has just as much armor as a locust, a mech that weighs half the size and is probably a quarter of the target. So in the current game, of course, the cicada and the cicada in all its variants, of which there are 2 in the game, obviously the chicken and the turkey, are both there, and they're both bad, and you should never ever use them. But the chicken is barely adequate and somewhat usable. The turkey is not. It is bad. Yeah, there's not much more to say about that. It is the worst mech in the game by a country mile. Okay, the next term is Batchall. Would you dare to refuse my Batchall? This is a reference to the animated TV series of BattleTech, which was on television along with like Transformers and Power Rangers and various other things back in that time. And Batchall is like lawful kind of ritual declaration of war, if you will, where the clanners would come to your world and would challenge you for your planet or whatever, and then they would declare how much they've got, and you would declare how much you've got, and then some sort of competition would come about that is fair and equitable. And to refuse it just basically opens you up to all-out total war, which, considering that the clanners at that time had superior numbers and technology, and they had superior numbers at the beginning simply because the upper edge of the inner sphere was just taken completely by surprise, and so there wasn't much more there than the standard garrisons, and there was, you know, a total invasion coming in a very nuanced in a small point at the top. Obviously the inner sphere is massive compared to the total sum of the clans, but much in the German blitzkrieg style, they just turned up at one particular point and had overwhelming power, and drove pretty far in before they actually started to get bogged down. So this saying has been made famous by the animated show, where one of the characters is like, Botch All, what's that? And he's like, he dares to refuse my Batchall. And so, yeah, it's a meme. I will provide you with a link in the description where you can go and watch this awful show. It's not awful. Like, you know, when you were young, when you were 12 or something, 13, it was pretty good. But if my analytics are to be believed, there isn't a single person watching this who's under 25, so I can't really recommend that you watch it. Another phrase I use a lot is higara. It's a Japanese sounding phrase, and I think it's sort of rooted in that same idea of honorable combat. It basically means that when you have like a really good fight with someone or whatever, you don't want to. So the clans don't unnecessarily punish each other. There's no point they want to win mechs and technology and prizes and stuff like that. They're not necessarily genocidal, apart from maybe Clan Smoke Jaguar. So if your opponent was honourable but you were winning, you could offer them Higara, basically offering them surrender. They would be able to leave. Say the planet is disputed, they would be able to leave that planet without being fired upon or losing any more stuff. Basically considered to be an honour. So when I said, when that stupid griffin was sniping at me from halfway across the map on that 2.5-hour mission, I said, "No Higara for you." I meant to say that there would be no mercy, and the guy is not getting out of it alive, even if he ejects. So yeah, that's basically what that means. I'll provide the link for the show. You can watch you can subject yourself to the first episode if you so wish. Is that it? I'm missing one. Where's my Delta one? There we go. Okay, Delta. This is another one that comes up all the time. The delta is the difference between your heat sinking and your alpha. If it's referred to as a percentage, it means the percentage of the total sum of your heat bar, which is 100. So, for example, if my heat sinking is 45 and my alpha is 90, then my delta is also 45, because the 90 alpha, which is firing all my weapons, minus my 45 heat sinking, leaves me with a delta of 45. So, out of 100, 45 is obviously 45%, so my delta is 45%. That is what I would refer to as a high delta. So when I say that I'm looking at a delta of between 20 and 25% as being ideal, I'm basically saying that being able to fire all my weapons 5 times in a row is ideal. And often when I say that, I'm referring to main weapons, because I like to have options. So I like to maybe have a bank of 4 medium lasers to use in an emergency, where, you know, heat be damned, I'll overheat myself to kill someone here and now. Those aren't usually considered in my delta calculations. The delta calculation is usually to do with main weapons. So my main weapons can fire with a delta of 20%, and then I'll consider my optional weapons as something different, as something on top of that. But it can mean either. That's just how I use it. So as a concept, delta is very helpful, because when you build a mech, you just plow the weapons on it or whatever you happen to have, you can then look at the heat bar, work out what the delta is, and think to yourself, is the delta between 20 and 30%, is that rational level of heat to be dealing with? I'm very much of the opinion that a mech that is heat neutral is an underpowered mech, and I never build heat neutral mechs. Even in desert biomes, I still feel like you probably want a delta of about 5 or 10%, considered over a normal biome. So if the heat was normal and wasn't like 20% overheat like you get in a desert biome, then we're looking for like 5 to 10% of that, which translates to about 15 to 20%. But it's one of those things. I generally avoid desert and lunar environments anyway. If you are in those environments and your delta is the standard sort of 20 to 30%, then you just need to remember that you've only got maybe 2 or 3 alphas, whereas you would normally have 4 or 5, and just try and engineer yourself so that you can fire at full power for 1 or 2 or 3 turns and be ready to be in cover to cool off after those 2 or 3 turns are up, so as to basically waste the enemy's turns while you cool down, and then you can come back out again and carry on fighting. Okay, and that's it. Those are the 5 things. So we covered the Boombox, the Disco Ball, the Batchall, and the Higara, and the Delta. And I hope you find this helpful, and if you have any other terms that you want explained, although these are the ones that I use all the time, I'm not sure I use many others, then just drop me a comment and I will put together something when we get enough of them together. But these are the basic ones, and in the description will be the link for the BattleTech animated series, which you should watch, if only to share in the trauma of my childhood. All right, laters.